The fluorescent hum of the conference room felt like a physical pressure, a low, oppressive thrum beneath the escalating voices. Rain lashed against the panoramic windows, mirroring the storm brewing inside. Mr. Silas Thorne, CEO of Vanguard Innovations, a man whose presence usually consumed any space he entered, was visibly unraveling. His impeccably tailored suit now seemed to strain across his shoulders, his jaw tight, eyes darting between the 6 grim faces across the polished mahogany table.
"Unacceptable," he boomed, the word cracking like a whip. "Absolutely unacceptable. We've been negotiating this merger for months, and now you bring this up?"
What precisely is the holdup? What changed? His voice, usually a tool of persuasion, was edged with a frantic desperation, a subtle tremor that betrayed the colossal financial and reputational stakes hanging in the balance. The opposing counsel, a stern woman with a perpetually unimpressed expression, merely steepled her fingers, her silence amplifying Thorne's agitated outburst. Most people's emotions are a reaction, a mirror reflecting the room's temperature. Praise lifts them, criticism shakes them. Tension spreads into them like an uncontrolled contagion. Thorne was a textbook example, his stability outsourced entirely to the shifting tides of the negotiation. But then there was Anya Sharma. She sat 2 seats down from Thorne, a quiet anchor in the rising emotional tempest. Her posture was relaxed, almost languid, a stark contrast to the coiled tension of everyone else. Her gaze, clear and unblinking, wasn't fixed on Thorne's histrionics or the opposing counsel's impassive face, but seemed to drift, taking in the rain-streaked cityscape outside, then settling briefly on the subtle interplay of light and shadow on the table. She hadn't spoken a word since the latest bombshell dropped, a last-minute clause from the acquiring company that fundamentally altered the equity split. Thorne had seen it as an affront, a deliberate act of sabotage. The other Vanguard executives had responded with a chorus of indignation, their faces flushed, their arguments increasingly shrill. Yet Anya remained unperturbed. Her emotional state wasn't a consequence of the room's chaos. It seemed to originate internally, a self-generated baseline. Approval didn't inflate her. Disapproval wouldn't collapse her. She didn't outsource stability. One of the junior associates, keen to impress Thorne and visibly flustered, had mumbled something about Anya's silence potentially being perceived as a lack of engagement, or worse, indifference. The thought had crossed others' minds too. Was she simply out of her depth? Or was she just not seeing the urgency? Many people feel an insistent pull to be seen accurately and quickly. If misunderstood, they rush to correct, to manage the narrative, to sculpt their image. But Anya made no such move. She didn't chase image control. She allowed the temporary misperception to exist, a quiet cloak she wore comfortably. Perhaps she knew, deep down, that consistent behavior over time ultimately outweighs momentary impressions. She allowed perception to settle naturally, understanding that the truth would eventually emerge, not through frantic self-correction, but through the quiet power of her eventual actions. Thorne, meanwhile, was demanding immediate resolution. We need answers now. This clause needs to be rescinded or we walk. Get legal on the phone, push back, escalate this immediately. His need for fast closure was palpable, a desperate lunge for certainty in the face of discomfort. Resolve now. Clarify now. Decide now. The natural human inclination is to close the loop, to tie off the loose ends, to escape the churning anxiety of the unresolved. But power, true psychological power, includes a tolerance for this unresolved space. Anya, finally, shifted. Not dramatically, just a subtle straightening of her shoulders, a slow turn of her head towards Thorne. Her voice, when it came, was soft, almost a murmur against the drumming rain, yet it cut through the din of frantic pronouncements with an unsettling clarity. "Silas," she began, her tone even, devoid of urgency or heat. Before we demand a rescission, perhaps we should consider why this clause appeared. What problem precisely is their legal team trying to solve with this alteration? Because not all clarity improves with speed. Some improves with distance, and some with understanding the root cause. She paused, letting her question hang in the air, a deliberate and uncomfortable silence. She didn't rush to offer a solution, but rather deepened the discomfort, forcing everyone to sit with the ambiguity, to consider the nuances that quick reactions would have obliterated. She could leave conversations open, questions pending, tension unclosed, because she understood that not all clarity improves with speed. In that moment, as Thorne hesitated, his bluster temporarily deflated by her quiet query, the room seemed to subtly recenter around Anya. The rain still lashed, the stakes remained astronomical, but the frantic energy began to ebb, replaced by a nascent, almost imperceptible shift in the dynamic. It was a demonstration, subtle yet profound, that power isn't always loud or dominant or intimidating. Sometimes it's just internal stability paired with social gravity, a quiet force that reorganizes attention without ever needing to shout. This quiet force, this internal stability paired with social gravity, isn't some mystical endowment granted to a chosen few. It is instead a profound cultivation, a deliberate mastery of the self that manifests in a series of subtle yet undeniable signals. Imagine for a moment the eye of a hurricane, a serene, calm center, while all around it chaos churns. This is the emotional state of those who wield true psychological power. While the vast majority of people find their emotional compass constantly recalibrating based on external winds, praise lifting them, criticism shaking them, tension spreading into them like a virus, the psychologically powerful generate their own baseline. They do not outsource their stability to the room, to the fluctuating moods of others, or to the shifting tides of public opinion. Approval doesn't inflate them. Disapproval doesn't collapse them. Their state originates internally, a deep well of composure that remains untroubled by superficial currents. This isn't indifference. It's a deliberate detachment from external validation as a primary source of emotional equilibrium. This deep-seated internal stability grants them a remarkable freedom, the comfort with unequal perception. Most of us feel an innate, almost desperate need to be seen accurately and quickly. If we are misunderstood, there is an immediate, often frantic rush to correct the narrative, to clarify our intentions, to adjust the external mirror to reflect what we believe to be our true image. But true psychological power tolerates temporary misperception. They don't chase image control. They don't expend energy constantly curating how they are perceived in every fleeting moment. Why? Because they know, with an unshakable certainty, that consistent behavior over time outweighs momentary impressions. They understand that trying to manage every tiny nuance of perception is a fool's errand. Instead, they allow perception to settle naturally, trusting that their actions, repeated and consistent, will ultimately define them more powerfully than any immediate clarification ever could. This patience extends beyond perception. It also dictates their approach to problem solving. While discomfort pushes most people towards fast closure, resolve now, clarify now, decide now, power includes a deep tolerance for unresolved space. They can leave conversations open, questions pending, tension unclosed. They are not beholden to the anxious urgency that demands instant clarity or immediate resolution, because they understand that not all clarity improves with speed. Some clarity, in fact, improves with distance, with time, with the quiet unfolding that allows deeper truths to emerge. This isn't procrastination, it's a strategic patience, a recognition that forcing an outcome often yields a brittle one. The way they deploy their attention is another telltale sign. Attention signals value. When someone's attention is scattered, Diluted across multiple tasks or half listening, it feels cheap, as if their presence is merely a thin veneer. But psychologically powerful people direct their attention with surgical precision. When they listen, it is complete. There is no sense of a divided focus, no half presence, no lingering distraction. You feel fully seen, fully heard. And when they disengage, it is clean, without lingering threads or ambiguous signals. This selective, potent application of attention makes their attention perceived as scarce and therefore immensely impactful. You don't take it for granted because you know its value. This clarity of focus extends to how they interact within groups. Many people, driven by insecurity or a need for recognition, actively compete for narrative control. They shape stories, subtly highlighting their own contributions, positioning themselves as the leader, the most insightful, the one who made the critical decision. Insecurity actively edits narrative, but psychological power rarely argues for credit positioning. They allow reality to establish itself, content to let the facts speak, or to let others claim the spotlight. Why? Because influence that requires constant narration, that must be perpetually defended or asserted, is fragile. True influence is self-evident. It does not need a publicist. It simply is. This refusal to compete for narrative control, coupled with their internal stability, profoundly impacts how they respond when challenged publicly. Public challenge, for most, triggers an immediate status threat. The instinct is to defend fast, to escalate tone, to shut down the opposition. But psychological power slows down. They answer precisely, without urgency, without heat, their voice often maintaining an even, almost calm cadence. Their status perception isn't dependent on winning momentary skirmishes or dominating individual arguments. They understand that their composure, their deliberate and measured response in the face of provocation, often shifts group perception in their favor, demonstrating an underlying strength that bluster could never convey. It's a quiet strength that says, "I am unthreatened by your challenge, because my value does not rest on this moment's victory." This deliberate approach extends to the very rhythm of interaction. Power often appears in timing. Who pauses, who speaks first, who concludes. Psychologically powerful people are not rushed by conversational pressure. They take turns deliberately, allowing silence to breathe where others rush to fill it, allowing ideas to hang in the air rather than immediately pouncing. They close topics calmly, often with a decisive but unhurried finality. The interaction tempo subtly follows them, instead of pushing them. They are the maestros of the conversational orchestra, not merely players swept along by its current. The clearest, most undeniable sign of psychological power, however, is often indirect. It is less about what they do and more about what others do around them. Watch the room. When someone with this presence enters, or takes the floor, or simply engages, you will notice a subtle but undeniable recalibration. People lower their volume, adjust their posture, choose their words more carefully, instinctively seeking acknowledgement, not from fear, but from a profound sense of perceived weight. Their presence alone signals consequence. It's as if their internal stability creates a gravitational field, a subtle but potent pull that causes others to align and regulate around them. Humans instinctively calibrate around perceived consequence, and this quiet authority, this social gravity, signals consequences that are not punitive but significant. It's the difference between someone who shouts for attention and someone whose mere presence reorganizes the attention of an entire room. Ultimately, psychological power isn't loud. It isn't dominance. It isn't intimidation. It is, in its most refined form, an unwavering composure, a testament to internal stability paired with a profound social gravity. So, if you observe someone who remains centered while others shift, whose interactions move without force, whose very presence subtly reorganizes the attention and dynamics of an entire environment without ever needing to assert it overtly, You are witnessing power in its most sophisticated, potent expression. It is the kind of power that does not need a position, a title, or a pedestal to exist. It simply exists, a quiet, irresistible force, shaping the world around it through the profound mastery of self.